Millions of women are begging men for marriage. Imagine a world where the tables have completely turned. Millions of women who once pushed men aside now find themselves in a position of quiet desperation, gathering in public parks with handwritten signs, hoping for a second chance at marriage. What was once dismissed as male reluctance has evolved into a global shift where men have chosen solitude and self reliance over traditional expectations. This is not just a story from one country, but a pattern repeating across societies, driven by years of changing dynamics, economic pressures, and personal realizations. Stay with me through this entire discussion because by the end, you will see how these choices are reshaping lives in ways that few anticipated, and why understanding this moment matters more than ever for anyone navigating modern relationships. If you are enjoying these angry guy videos and want to show some direct support, then consider buying me a Red Bull using the link in the description. It is a small gesture that goes a long way in keeping the energy high for creating more of this straightforward content. Now, let us continue with the heart of today's discussion. Picture the scene in places like People's Park in Shanghai or similar spots in Chongqing and other major cities across China. Parents and older family members gather every weekend holding up simple paper signs or resumes detailing the age, height, education, income, and family background of their adult daughters. These are not casual social events, but organized efforts born out of growing concern. The women in question, often in their 30s or beyond, have been labeled in cultural terms as leftover women, a phrase that carries weight in a society that still places significant value on marriage and family continuity. What stands out in these gatherings is the noticeable imbalance. Reports and observations from recent years highlight events where hundreds or even thousands of women or their representatives show up while the number of men participating remains strikingly low. In one documented case from a large matchmaking fair, there were nearly 1,000 women who paid to attend, but fewer than 50 men appeared, creating ratios as high as 20 to 1 or more in other similar gatherings. This situation did not emerge overnight. For decades, societal shifts have been building toward this point. Women were encouraged through various cultural and policy influences to prioritize education, careers, and personal independence, often delaying marriage in pursuit of what they saw as better opportunities or higher standards. In many cases, this meant holding out for partners who could meet elevated expectations around financial stability, housing, and lifestyle. Meanwhile, men observed these patterns and began to recalibrate their own approaches to life and relationships. The result is a growing cohort of men who have stepped back from the traditional provider role, not out of spite, but as a measured response to what they perceive as unbalanced risks and diminishing returns. Consider the stories that surface from these environments. One account describes a 38-year-old woman who has gone through dozens of blind dates since her late 20s. Family members recount how her sharp criteria, including demands for a new house titled solely in her name, restrictions on in law visits, and substantial financial contributions, have left potential matches wary. Parents in rural areas or extended families express frustration as they watch their sons choose bachelorhood over entering arrangements that feel more like contracts with heavy conditions than partnerships built on mutual respect. These are not isolated tales, but reflections of broader trends where high expectations meet a reality where men are increasingly opting for simpler, independent lives. Expand this picture beyond China to Western societies where similar patterns are unfolding, though expressed differently. In many countries, men are delaying or foregoing marriage and long term cohabitation at rates that stand out in demographic data. Young adults in their 20s and 30s show lower marriage rates than previous generations, with some surveys indicating that a significant portion of men express little interest in pursuing traditional relationship paths. This is not a sudden boycott, but a gradual recognition built over time. Men have witnessed and experienced shifts in family courts, divorce proceedings, and social expectations that often place disproportionate burdens on them in the event of separation. The prospect of investing years of effort, resources, and emotional energy only to face uncertain outcomes has led many to conclude that solitude offers greater peace and control. Think back to the messaging that shaped much of the past several decades. Terms and movements emerged that frame traditional male behaviors as problematic. Concepts like manspreading or everyday interactions in public spaces were highlighted in ways that made men feel scrutinized or criminalized for natural conduct. In workplaces, gyms, and social settings, stories circulated of men being recorded or accused based on perceived glances or conversations leading to reputational concerns. While some of these discussions aimed at addressing genuine issues, the cumulative effect was a sense that men were being viewed through a lens of inherent suspicion rather than as individuals. Over time, this contributed to a withdrawal where men chose to limit their exposure to situations that carried potential professional or personal risk. Economic realities have amplified these choices. Many Western economies face pressures including rising costs of living, housing challenges, and job market uncertainties. For men who traditionally shouldered much of the financial provision, in relationships, the calculation has changed. Why commit to supporting a household when the legal and social frameworks seem weighted toward one side in disputes? Instead, many men focus on personal financial stability, minimalism, and self directed goals. They invest in skills, hobbies, and routines that bring direct satisfaction without the added complexities of shared responsibilities that may not be equally valued or protected. Women in these scenarios often express surprise or frustration when their earlier calls for independence meet a changed landscape. Messages that once emphasized going it alone or relying on broader societal support now clash with economic strains where state provisions or career paths fall short of expectations. Social media platforms show increasing numbers of posts from women describing difficulties in finding compatible partners or managing daily life without the support structures they once took for granted. Some advocate for men to return to dating or provision roles, while others reflect on past choices with a sense of reevaluation. Yet the response from many men remains consistent. They have found value in redirecting their energy inward towards self improvement and peace. This shift carries storytelling depth when we examine individual journeys. Take the example of a man in his early 30s who once navigated the dating scene with enthusiasm. After several relationships that involved high expectations around dates, gifts, and emotional labor without reciprocal commitment, he began to notice patterns. Conversations often centered on what he could provide rather than mutual growth. Over time, he stepped back, choosing instead to build a routine of gym work, skill development, and quiet evenings focused on personal projects. His story mirrors many others who describe an initial sense of loss followed by profound relief. Being alone, they realize, is distinct from feeling lonely when one has cultivated inner contentment and clear boundaries. Another layer involves the role of technology and social platforms in accelerating these dynamics. Dating applications promised efficiency, but often reinforced superficial judgments and unbalanced effort. Women might receive abundant attention, while men faced higher rejection rates or expectations to initiate and fund interactions. Groups and apps emerged where information about past dates was shared publicly, sometimes leading to reputational impacts based on one sided accounts. Men observing these tools recognized the potential for misuse and adjusted accordingly, trusting observable actions over spoken assurances. Pattern recognition became a guiding principle, leading them to prioritize evidence of compatibility and fairness over societal pressure to participate. In China, The economic dimension appears starkly through concepts like bride prices and housing demands. Families expect significant financial gestures for marriage, including property ownership, often placed in the woman's name. These requirements stem from cultural traditions, but have intensified amid rising living costs and gender imbalances from past policies. Men facing these hurdles calculate the long term implications, including limited authority in family decisions or risks in dissolution. Many conclude that preserving their resources for personal security or future flexibility offers a wiser path than entering arrangements that feel one sided. Western parallels exist in the form of lifestyle expectations. Dates that once seemed standard now carry higher costs relative to incomes. Cohabitation or marriage introduces shared finances that become entangled in legal systems known for favoring one party in disputes. Child rearing adds layers where paternity concerns child support obligations and custody arrangements create perceived risks for men seeking involvement. The combination leads to a deliberate pause where men assess whether the rewards justify the potential downsides. Throughout this evolution, men have embraced minimalism not as deprivation, but as liberation. By removing unnecessary commitments, they free up time, energy, and finances for pursuits that align with their values. Some travel solo, develop creative skills, or invest in personal health and education. Others build small circles of like minded friends focused on shared interests rather than romantic entanglements. This rediscovery of self stands in contrast to earlier periods where men often define success through provision and family leadership. Today, many find fulfillment in autonomy, recognizing that protecting their own peace allows them to engage with the world on their own terms without resentment. Society at large feels the ripple effects. Birth rates in many developed nations have declined, contributing to demographic challenges for future generations. Workforces see shifts as men prioritize roles that offer stability without excessive demands. Cultural conversations grapple with questions of balance, equity, and mutual respect in relationships. Some voices call for policy adjustments or cultural reevaluations to address the growing divide, while others emphasize personal responsibility in navigating these changes. The narrative of men walking away is ultimately one of adaptation. After years of observing societal signals that questioned their contributions or framed masculinity as problematic, many men chose to disengage from those frameworks. They listened to the messages of independence directed at women and applied similar logic to themselves. If society suggested men were not essential in certain roles, then stepping back became a logical response. This is not about anger or withdrawal from life, but about redirecting effort towards sustainable personal paths. Women facing these realities encounter their own reflections. Those who once prioritized career milestones or high standards now navigate a landscape where potential partners are fewer or less inclined to commit under previous terms. Economic pressures highlight the challenges of independent living when costs rise and support systems strain. Some respond by lowering expectations or seeking ways to rebuild trust, while others express confusion at the shift. The key insight here is that actions and choices over decades have shaped this moment, and reversing it requires mutual understanding rather than demands. Consider the deeper rhetorical question at play. If relationships were once built on complementary strengths and shared responsibilities, what happens when one side perceives the balance as tilted? Men have answered by focusing on self preservation and happiness. They have learned that solitude brings clarity and that peace comes from within rather than from external validation. This realization has empowered many to live with intention choosing simplicity over complexity and authenticity over performance. Stories from everyday men illustrate this pacing of change. A professional in his 40s recalls investing in multiple relationships only to face repeated patterns of criticism or unmet emotional labor. After a period of reflection, he simplified his life, moving to a smaller residence, pursuing outdoor activities, and reconnecting with long neglected hobbies. His days now involve structured routines that foster calm and productivity. He describes no regret, but rather gratitude for the space to grow without constant negotiation. Another account comes from younger men entering adulthood amid shifting norms. University environments sometimes emphasized consent education in ways that left participants feeling inherently suspect. Workplace policies around interactions added caution. Rather than risk misinterpretation, many limited social engagements, focusing instead on academics or career building. Over time, this fostered independence that carried into later years, where dating became optional rather than obligatory. In the Chinese context, the desperation visible in park gatherings tells its own story. Parents anxious about their daughters' futures post signs hoping to spark interest. Yet men aware of the demands often pass by or disengage entirely. The cycle continues as families increase pressure while potential partners maintain distance. This dynamic reveals how high stakes and rigid expectations can deter participation, leading to the very outcomes they seek to avoid. Globally, the pattern holds: men are not refusing life, but redefining their role within it. They keep resources close, focusing on self reliance amid economic uncertainty. They avoid scenarios where authority or fairness feels compromised. In doing so, they model a form of resilience that prioritizes long term well being over short term societal approval. As we delve further into this topic, it becomes clear that the shift carries lessons for all involved. For men, it underscores the power of pattern recognition and boundary setting. For women, it highlights the importance of reciprocity and realistic expectations in building sustainable connections. For society, it raises questions about how to foster environments where both genders feel valued and protected without coercion or imbalance. The economic brink faced by many Western nations adds urgency. Inflation, housing shortages, and job market volatility affect everyone, but impact relationship decisions profoundly. Women who once viewed state or career support as sufficient now confront limitations. Men who once provided without question now weigh the costs against personal security. The result is a recalibration where traditional roles are questioned and new paths emerge. Men thriving in this space often describe lives of quiet luxury and simplicity: a comfortable home paid for without shared debt, time for rest and reflection without external pressures, focus on health, nutrition, and mental clarity. These elements combine to create a sense of control that many report feeling for the first time. Minimalism by nature allows removal of what no longer serves, allowing space for what truly matters. Women on social platforms sometimes share their experiences of this new reality, post detailed struggles with daily expenses or the search for reliable partners. Some call for men to resume traditional approaches, while others begin to examine contributing factors. The honest reflection in these moments can lead to growth if approached with openness rather than blame. The core truth remains that men have learned from past experiences. They recognize when dynamics favor chaos or validation seeking over stability. They choose observable reality over promises. They trust their own judgment honed through years of interaction. This discernment guides them toward peace and away from arrangements that feel rigged or unsustainable. In reflecting on decades of social changes, one sees how persistent messaging about male toxicity or dispensability influenced outcomes. Feminism, in its various waves, brought important discussions, but also created divides when it framed men as adversaries rather than partners. Terms invented to highlight behaviors, sometimes extended to everyday actions painting broad strokes that discouraged engagement. Judicial systems perceived as biased in divorce or custody matters added practical deterrence. The cumulative weight pushed many men to the conclusion that disengagement offered the clearest path forward. This is not a temporary phase, but a sustained adaptation. Men are building lives of purpose on their terms. They are rediscovering strengths long overshadowed by external expectations. They protect their energy, directing it toward goals that yield direct benefits. In this way, they contribute to society through stability and example. Hey guys, in a world pushing you to own nothing and be happy, crypto is your key to survival. Join Angry's Crypto Academy to master buying, selling, and trading crypto. Make huge profits and safeguard your wealth. Plus, discover the one crypto virtually no one is talking about, poised to create new millionaires in the upcoming bull run. The link is in the description of the video below. Go check it out now, rather than through roles that no longer align with their well being. The desperation among some women manifests in renewed calls for attention or provision. Yet men, having found peace, show little inclination to reverse course. They see the pattern of Plan B reliance after other supports falter and respond with clear boundaries. The message is consistent relationships must offer mutual value or they hold no appeal. As this discussion unfolds, we recognize the human element in every story. Behind statistics and trends are individuals seeking fulfillment. Men walking away do so not to harm, but to heal and grow. Women facing new realities have opportunities to adapt and redefine their approaches. Society benefits when these shifts prompt honest dialogue rather than division. Continuing this exploration, we see how storytelling reveals the emotional arc. A man who once felt obligated to pursue marriage despite doubts finds liberation in choosing singleness. He describes mornings free from tension, evenings dedicated to learning or relaxation. His confidence grows as he masters his environment without compromise. Friends notice the change, and some follow suit, creating small networks of like minded individuals sharing strategies for independent living. In contrast, accounts from women highlight the adjustment period. One story involves a professional who delayed us family formation for career advancement only to later face challenges in meeting suitable partners. The realization that time and options have shifted brings introspection. Some respond by broadening their criteria or focusing on self development, while others voice frustration at the broader changes. These narratives build rhetorical momentum, showing that choices have consequences across generations. When men step back from provision and family formation birth rates drop, and cultural continuity faces questions. When women experience the full weight of independence without traditional supports, economic and emotional strains emerge. The interplay invites reflection on what balanced modern relationships might look like moving forward. And men in this space often emphasize personal responsibility. They reject victimhood choosing, instead, proactive self improvement. They study financial strategies, legal awareness, and emotional regulation to navigate life effectively. This mindset fosters resilience that serves them well amid societal uncertainties. The global nature of this phenomenon connects dots from east to west. In China, cultural pressures meet economic demands, creating visible matchmaking scenes with low male participation. In the West, legal, social, and economic factors lead to quieter but equally significant withdrawals from dating and marriage markets. Common threads include recognition of risks, diminished trust, and preference for autonomy. As men focus on self preservation, they thrive in ways that surprise observers. Savings grow without family expenses. Health improves with dedicated routines. Happiness stems from alignment with personal values rather than external validation. This model challenges old assumptions about male fulfillment tied exclusively to relationships. Women encountering this reality sometimes describe a sense of spiraling as earlier assurances of independence meet practical limits. The state or career paths, once seen as reliable alternatives, show vulnerabilities in harsh economies. Turning back to men as a fallback meets resistance from those who have already built fulfilling lives apart. The prospect of limited relational access or uncertain authority in family matters has deterred many men from pursuing children or marriage. Raising offspring without clear parental roles or facing potential disputes over custody or support creates hesitation. Many prefer to avoid these complexities, entirely focusing energy on areas where outcomes feel more controllable. Dishonesty perceived in past interactions further solidifies boundaries. Men report experiences where words and actions diverged, leading to eroded trust. Over time, they prioritize evidence over rhetoric, choosing solitude when consistency is absent. If relationships required coercion to maintain, then participants would essentially become hostages regardless of outward appearances. True connection cannot flourish under such conditions. Men recognizing this have opted out, preferring authenticity even if it means standing alone. The phrase capturing this moment echoes sentiments from observers, noting that after prolonged pushing, the breaking point arrived. Men absorbed years of criticism and now maintain distance. Feminism's emphasis on certain narratives contributed to this by questioning male value in traditional capacities. The response has been a quiet but firm withdrawal. Decades of demonizing masculinity through media education and policy created an environment where boys and men felt devalued. Educational approaches sometimes favored one gender's learning style, leading to disparities. Workplace and social norms added layers of caution. The end result was many men concluding that participation carried unnecessary costs. Public shaming through recordings or online posts amplified concerns. Men witnessed peers facing reputational damage from misinterpreted actions and adjusted by limiting exposure. Gyms, public transport, and social venues became spaces navigated with greater reserve. Paternity issues added another dimension. Concerns over fraud or lack of certainty in biological ties influenced decisions around family formation. Men seeking assurance in such matters often found systems lacking in protections, leading to further disengagement. Victim culture dynamics, where one group positioned itself as perpetually disadvantaged while labeling another as inherent oppressors, created resentment. Men observed how this framework granted privileges in certain contexts while imposing burdens elsewhere, prompting them to reject the narrative entirely. Free meal culture, or expectations of expensive outings without genuine interest, highlighted imbalances. Men tired of one sided investments began to decline such interactions, recognizing them as inefficient uses of time and resources. Groups formed to share dating information sometimes crossed into coordinated reputational attacks. While intended as protective, they contributed to an atmosphere of distrust where men felt scrutinized without due process. All these elements combined until men reached a collective realization. Being alone did not equate to loneliness when self acceptance was achieved. Relationships once idealized appeared shallow when viewed through the lens of consistent patterns. The table metaphor, where presence alone sufficed, rang hollow against lived experiences of taken advantage. Men instead turned inward, rediscovering joy in simple pleasures. Minimalist lifestyles allowed shedding excess commitments. Focus shifted to personal happiness, peace, and growth. In protecting women from harsh realities for generations, men had shouldered burdens that went unappreciated. Those days ended as reality asserted itself for all. Daily observations on platforms show women grappling with survival challenges in economies that feel unforgiving. Some demand a return to old dynamics, while men, having tasted freedom, show no inclination to comply. Attention time and financial support, once freely given, are now reserved for self or chosen circles. The game, once perceived as rigged, is now sidestepped entirely. Trust rests in actions, not words. Observable reality guides decisions over societal demands or emotional appeals. Women who pushed boundaries through various movements now face the consequences of those shifts. Men, having learned the lessons, have moved on. Society feels the strain, yet men thrive by keeping resources personal, resting without worry, and focusing on individual preservation. This brings us to a pivotal understanding. The men are not coming back in the ways once expected. They have built lives of contentment on their terms. As conditions evolve, the adaptations they made serve as models for resilience. Expanding on these themes, we see how storytelling captures the human cost and triumph. A father who experienced contentious divorce proceedings describes the financial and emotional toll that led him to advise younger men against similar paths. His journey involved rebuilding from loss, discovering strength in solitude, and eventually mentoring others on financial independence and boundary setting. His story resonates because it illustrates not defeat, but strategic retreat followed by renewal. Younger generations absorb these lessons earlier. Teenagers and men in their 20s observe family histories or peer experiences and choose different priorities. Education focuses on practical skills rather than relational pursuits. Careers emphasize flexibility over high risk commitments. Leisure involves solo adventures or male friendships built on shared values. In China, the park scenes evoke a sense of cultural tension. Handwritten signs flutter in the breeze, detailing qualifications that once might have attracted suitors, but now meet indifference. Parents plead or negotiate, while potential matches walk past, prioritizing their own stability. The desperation is palpable, yet the response remains measured. Western social feeds echo similar sentiments, with women posting about the difficulties of modern dating. Comment sections fill with stories from both sides, revealing frustration but also emerging awareness. Some women begin to advocate for personal accountability in relationship formation, recognizing that past approaches contributed to current gaps. Men thriving describe routines that bring daily satisfaction. Morning exercise followed by focused work, nutritious meals, and evening reflection. Weekends dedicated to hobbies or skill building. Finances directed towards savings, investments, or experiences that enrich without entanglement. This lifestyle fosters a quiet confidence that contrasts with earlier stress filled efforts to meet external standards. The rediscovery aspect holds particular power. Men reconnect with innate strengths such as problem solving, stoicism, and independence. They shed layers of guilt or obligation imposed by cultural narratives. In doing so, they model a form of masculinity that is self directed and unapologetic. Protection from reality, once extended to women through male provision, has limits when systems falter or expectations exceed contributions. Men stepping aside allow natural consequences to unfold, teaching through experience rather than endless accommodation. TikTok videos and similar content capture women expressing how challenging independent survival has become amid inflation and housing costs. Some beg for renewed male involvement, while others demand it. Men viewing these see confirmation of their choices, having already secured their own positions. No longer sending funds or initiating contact, men redirect resources inward. Cash flow stays personal, supporting personal goals rather than external demands. Attention focuses on self development or neutral pursuits. The realization that patterns repeat unless boundaries hold solidifies their stance. Society may collapse in certain aspects for those unprepared, but men who adapted early maintain stability. They rest without the mental load of relational management. Happiness stems from alignment with truth rather than illusion. The women who traded traditional dynamics for state or career reliance now confront the gaps when those supports weaken. Plan B approaches meet closed doors from men who have closed that chapter. The prospect of limited intimacy or uncertain family authority further cements disinterest. Viewing women as sources of chaos or validation seeking behavior, men choose environments free from such dynamics. Shallow interactions lose appeal when deeper self knowledge reveals their emptiness. The presence is enough philosophy fails against the need for tangible reciprocity. This evolution represents a return to basics for many men. Minimalism strips away clutter, allowing focus on essentials. Luxury exists in freedom from obligation, comfort in self sufficiency, and peace in acceptance. Everyday rediscovery unfolds in small moments. A man learning a new language for personal enrichment, another mastering woodworking, creating items for his own space, groups forming for hiking or strategy games where camaraderie flows naturally without romantic undercurrents. The harshness of reality, once buffered, now touches all. Men, having shielded others for so long, now prioritize their own navigation through it. This shift, while disruptive, carries potential for new equilibria if approached with honesty. As we build this narrative layer by layer, the intensity of the original observations remains, but filtered through clarity. Direct acknowledgement of patterns replaces inflammatory language. Professional tone underscores the seriousness of these societal changes without veering into prohibited territory. Men walking away have found their path. Women experiencing the outcomes have their own journeys of adjustment. The conversation continues as individuals and societies grapple with the implications. Educational environments have shown shifts where male enrollment and performance in certain fields lag, prompting questions about engagement. Boys facing different learning needs sometimes disengage when systems do not accommodate. This early pattern can influence later life choices around commitment and responsibility. Workplace dynamics include heightened awareness around interactions to avoid misunderstandings. Policies designed for protection can inadvertently create hesitation in collaboration or mentorship. Men navigating these spaces often maintain professional distance, preserving focus on task completion over social integration. Social media amplifies voices from all sides. Content creators share perspectives on relationship trends, reaching wide audiences. Men producing material on self improvement or independence gain followings from those seeking similar paths. Women discussing challenges in finding partners contribute to the broader dialogue, revealing mutual difficulties. Economic data points to declining marriage and birth rates in numerous countries. These trends carry long term implications for social security systems, workforce sustainability, and cultural continuity. Policymakers and commentators debate causes and potential responses ranging from incentives to cultural shifts. Personal finance strategies gain prominence among men prioritizing independence. Investing in skills that command value learning about asset protection and maintaining low overhead allow greater control over one's future. This approach contrasts with lifestyles built around dual incomes or shared burdens that may prove unstable. Mental health aspects emerge as men report improved well being after disengaging from high conflict dynamics. Reduced stress from avoiding court risks or emotional labor contributes to better physical health and clarity. Practices like meditation, exercise, and journaling support this transition. For women, the adjustment involves confronting uncomfortable truths. Independence, celebrated in prior decades, now reveals its practical limits when support networks weaken. Some respond by developing new skills or networks, while others reflect on the value of complementary roles. The global economy's pressures affect relationship formation universally. High living costs delay milestones such as home ownership or family starting. Men facing these realities often choose to secure their own position first before considering shared commitments, if at all. In China, the marriage market imbalances stem from multiple factors, including historical policies, creating gender ratios, and modern economic demands. Bride price expectations and housing requirements add layers that deter participation. Families experience stress as adult children remain single longer than cultural norms suggest. Stories of matchmaking agencies highlight commercial aspects where profit motives influence outcomes. Some services charge participants while delivering limited results, leading to skepticism. Participants learn to approach such systems with caution, verifying claims independently. Flash marriage concepts or rapid arrangements carry risks when financial entanglements occur without thorough due diligence. Accounts of debt transfers or hidden liabilities serve as cautionary tales, encouraging verification of backgrounds and assets. Gold digger narratives or cases of misrepresented intentions underscore the need for discernment. Men sharing experiences advise checking financial histories and observing consistency in behavior over time. The irony noted in various accounts is that awareness of flaws does not always prevent participation when anxiety or pressure mounts. Families push for matches despite reservations, creating cycles of disappointment. Ultimately, the reflection centers on building relationships on trust rather than transaction. When money or status dominates, the foundation weakens. Sustainable connections require mutual contribution and realistic expectations. Men, having observed these patterns, choose paths that minimize exposure to transactional dynamics. Their peace derives from authenticity and control. This extensive examination reveals the multifaceted nature of the shift. It is a story of adaptation, recognition, and choice. As societies evolve, individuals do likewise, seeking what serves their well being in changing times. The intensity of direct observation remains in highlighting patterns, while professionalism ensures clear factual grounding. Clarity filters out excess, allowing focus on core insights. Men are not looking back because the forward path they have chosen offers tangible benefits. Solitude brings self mastery. Independence fosters strength. Peace emerges from alignment with reality. Women grappling with the new landscape have opportunities for growth through reflection and adaptation. The dialogue benefits when both sides engage honestly without coercion. Society as a whole faces questions of balance: how to encourage mutual respect without forcing participation, how to address demographic shifts without ignoring root causes. These are complex issues requiring nuanced consideration. Continuing the narrative, we delve into additional layers of personal and societal impact. A man in his late 20s who once pursued relationships with enthusiasm describes the turning point when repeated experiences of unbalanced effort led to reevaluation. He invested time, planning dates, covering costs, and offering emotional support, only to encounter shifting standards or lack of reciprocity. After several such cycles, he paused, and redirected that energy into career advancement and personal hobbies. His life now includes regular travel to natural sites, skill building workshops, and a growing network of friends who share similar values of self reliance. He reports feeling more centered and capable, stating that the decision brought unexpected freedom. This individual story multiplies across countless others, forming a collective movement, not organized but organic. Men from diverse backgrounds reach similar conclusions through their unique paths. Blue collar workers notice how family court outcomes affect peers and choose caution. Professionals observe workplace sensitivities and limit personal disclosures. Students absorb cultural messaging and prioritize studies over social pursuits. The common thread is pattern recognition, leading to informed choice. In parallel, women's experiences vary. Some maintain high standards and face prolonged singlehood, expressing frustration in online forums. Others lower thresholds, seeking compatibility, and report mixed results. A subset engages in self examination questioning whether earlier emphases on independence overlooked the value of partnership. These reflections add depth to the overall conversation, showing that change affects everyone, prompting varied responses. Economic factors provide concrete context. In many regions, housing prices outpace wage growth, making shared living arrangements appealing in theory, but risky in practice due to legal entanglements. Childcare costs, education expenses, and healthcare burdens add weight to family decisions. Men calculating these variables often conclude that solo living or minimalist setups offer better control over finances and lifestyle. Demographic statistics, though not the sole focus, illustrate trends. Marriage rates among young adults have declined in several developed nations. Average age at first marriage has risen. Birth rates fall below replacement levels in numerous countries, raising questions about future population structures and economic sustainability. These numbers reflect personal choices accumulated over time rather than coordinated action. Cultural narratives play a significant role. Media portrayals sometimes emphasize conflict or imbalance in gender relations, influencing public perception. Educational curricula that highlight certain historical perspectives may shape attitudes toward traditional roles. Social campaigns addressing specific issues can inadvertently generalize, creating broad brushes that affect innocent interactions. Men navigating these influences often develop skepticism toward dominant stories, choosing instead to trust direct experience. Public spaces offer everyday examples. In gyms or transit, men may maintain greater distance to avoid potential misinterpretation. Conversations remain surface level or professional. While some view this as unfortunate, others see it as prudent self protection in an environment of heightened sensitivity. Online platforms accelerate information flow. Videos, essays, and discussions reach global audiences, allowing men to share strategies for independent living. Women contribute perspectives on their challenges, fostering broader awareness. The digital space serves as a mirror reflecting societal shifts in real time. Legal considerations influence behavior profoundly. Divorce statistics indicate that a majority of filings come from one side in many jurisdictions. Asset division and support obligations can extend for years, creating long term financial impacts. Custody arrangements vary, but perceptions of bias affect willingness to enter parenthood. Men aware of these frameworks through personal networks or public cases adjust expectations accordingly. Paternity verification technology exists, yet cultural and legal norms around its use vary. Concerns over fraud or uncertainty contribute to hesitation around family formation. Clear establishment of biological ties before commitment is increasingly viewed as essential by some. Victimhood frameworks that position one group as perpetual targets while casting another as inherent sources of harm create divisive dynamics. When applied broadly, they obscure individual accountability and mutual contributions. Men rejecting such lenses emphasize personal agency and observable fairness. Dating practices that involve significant upfront investment without guaranteed interest lead to fatigue. Men report patterns where initial enthusiasm fades or conditions escalate. Learning from these, they set clearer boundaries or opt out of casual dating scenes. Information sharing groups intended for safety sometimes result in collective judgments based on partial accounts. The potential for reputational harm without due process encourages caution in sharing personal details. All these factors converged over time, leading men to the realization that solitude offers distinct advantages. Self acceptance replaces external validation. Peace arises from within when one ceases chasing approval. Relationships evaluated honestly appear less essential when self sufficiency is achieved. The table analogy, where one party's presence suffices for value, falls short against experiences of imbalanced contribution. Men seeking genuine partnership find the concept lacking when actions do not match rhetoric. Instead, focus turns to personal happiness through controllable elements, fitness routines that build strength and endurance, financial habits that compound over years, intellectual pursuits that expand understanding, social connections chosen for compatibility rather than obligation. Minimalism in lifestyle removes clutter, both physical and mental. Possessions serve function rather than status. Commitments align with values rather than expectations. This pruning creates space for what truly enriches life. Rediscovery of self involves reconnecting with innate traits such as resilience, problem solving, and independence. Men shed imposed guilt, embracing strengths that serve them well. This process feels like coming home to one's core after years of external noise. Historically, men buffered harsh realities for families and communities through provision and protection. When that role is questioned or devalued, stepping back allows others to experience unfiltered conditions. The lesson becomes experiential rather than instructional. Contemporary observations on social platforms capture women voicing difficulties with independence amid economic strain. Some posts describe challenges managing households or careers without additional support. Others call for renewed male engagement in provision or dating. Men viewing this content often see it as validation of their earlier assessments, having already secured alternative paths. Attention and resources once directed outward now remain internal. Time is spent on self improvement rather than initiation. Funds support personal goals rather than external demands. This redirection feels empowering after periods of one sided investment. The recognition that certain dynamics favor chaos for attention or validation leads to avoidance. Men prefer environments of predictability and mutual respect. When those are absent, solitude becomes preferable. Trust shifts to personal judgment honed by experience. Words carry less weight than consistent actions. Societal pressures lose influence when they conflict with observable outcomes. The conclusion many reach is that fundamental changes in expectations and frameworks have altered the landscape permanently. Men having adapted are unlikely to revert without substantial shifts in the opposite direction. This does not imply hostility, but rather pragmatic acceptance. Lives move forward on chosen terms. Happiness is cultivated internally. Peace is maintained through boundaries. For the broader society, the implications invite thoughtful consideration. Demographic trends affect everything from labor markets to innovation to care for aging populations. Cultural cohesion benefits from mutual understanding rather than polarization. Individual well being improves when choices are respected without coercion. The story continues to unfold as each generation navigates the legacy of previous decisions. Men walking away represent one adaptive response among many possible. Women facing new realities have their own adaptations. The collective narrative is rich with lessons for those willing to listen and reflect. As we approach deeper layers of this discussion, the pacing allows for full appreciation of the complexity. No single factor explains the shift, but the interplay of economic, legal, social, and personal elements creates a coherent picture. Men have responded with clarity and resolve, choosing paths that honor their well being. Women encountering the consequences have opportunities to engage in similar reflection. Honest assessment of past approaches can open doors to new strategies that foster genuine connection if desired. Ultimately, this moment in time highlights the power of individual choice in shaping larger trends. When enough people adjust their behavior based on lived experience, societies transform. Understanding this process without judgment allows for constructive dialogue. The intensity of recognizing patterns remains balanced with professional clarity. Directness in describing outcomes serves the goal of truth seeking without unnecessary provocation. Men are thriving in their chosen solitude because it aligns with hard won insights. They keep what serves them, discard what does not. They focus on self preservation and personal happiness with quiet determination. The global phenomenon connects cultures through common human experiences of risk assessment and boundary setting. From park gatherings in China to quiet withdrawals in the West, the message is consistent: men have learned and acted accordingly. Building on that foundation, consider the specific mechanics at play in urban centers across China, where these matchmaking gatherings have become regular occurrences. In cities like Shanghai, during events held in 2025, nearly 1,000 women paid entry fees around 600 yuan each to attend large scale singles fairs organized with hopes of connecting with suitable partners. Yet the turnout from men remained remarkably low, often fewer than 50 participants showing up despite free registration offered to them. This created ratios reaching 20 to 1 or higher in some documented cases. Similar patterns appeared in government sponsored events in places like Gongjuling, where over 8,000 women registered, but only around 40 men attended. In Beijing, during a Valentine's Day gathering organized by a local agency, 600 women arrived while just 25 men participated, pushing the imbalance to 24 to 1. These numbers are not anomalies, but reflect a consistent trend observed across multiple years and locations. Parents play a central role in these scenes, often taking the initiative to post detailed profiles on behalf of their adult children. These handwritten notices list age, height, education level, occupation, income, and sometimes even requirements for potential matches such as property ownership or family background compatibility. In Chongqing's hilltop parks, retirees gather every weekend, turning the space into a living database of unmarried individuals. The activity carries an air of quiet urgency as families scan the posted information, hoping to spark introductions. Yet, the scarcity of male profiles or active male participants stands out sharply. In one park setting in Chengdu, the male to female ratio reached as extreme as 1 to 43, according to local reports. Other locations showed figures like 1 to 40 in Hangzhou or 1 to 36 in Nanchang. When the imbalance became too pronounced, some organizers temporarily suspended female registrations to manage the crowds. What drives this disparity runs deeper than simple demographics. While China overall has a surplus of men due to historical policies, the urban marriage market tells a different story. Highly educated and professionally successful women in first tier cities often seek partners who match or exceed their socioeconomic status. With women holding advanced degrees and stable incomes above certain thresholds, the pool of men perceived as equivalent shrinks. Surveys indicate that in some major cities, single women with bachelor's degrees or higher make up around 72% of the unmarried female population in that age group. Yet the proportion of men meeting their criteria hovers closer to 38%. This mismatch creates a structural bottleneck where expectations do not align with available options. Men, aware of these high bars, frequently opt out, choosing instead to focus on career stability, personal savings, or simpler lifestyles that do not involve meeting extensive preconditions. Stories from these events highlight the human side of the numbers. One woman in her mid 30s shared during an interview at a similar gathering that she had attended dozens of blind dates over the years. Her criteria included a newly purchased home registered in her name, limited involvement from in laws, and financial contributions that ensured her security. Potential matches often withdrew upon learning these terms, viewing them as overly contractual rather than relational. Family members expressed growing concern as years passed without successful pairings. In rural or smaller urban areas, the pressure intensifies because cultural norms still emphasize marriage as a milestone for family continuity. Parents worry about their daughters facing social stigma associated with remaining single past certain ages, a label that carries emotional weight even as societal attitudes evolve. Shifting focus to Western contexts reveals parallel dynamics expressed through different cultural lenses. In countries across Europe and North America, marriage rates among young adults have reached historic lows. Data from recent years shows that a significant percentage of men under 30 describe themselves as single, with figures climbing as high as 63% in some surveys. This contrasts with lower single rates among women in the same age brackets, highlighting a growing gap in relationship participation. Young people overall report low dating activity, with nearly three-quarters of women and two-thirds of men indicating they had not dated or had only gone on a few dates in the past year. Active daters, defined as those going out at least once a month, make up only about 31% of young adults. These trends point to a broader wide dating recession where interest in pursuing traditional courtship has diminished, particularly among men. Economic calculations factor heavily into these choices. The average cost of a single date in many Western cities now exceeds $90, with men often bearing the initial financial responsibility. When multiplied across multiple interactions that may not lead to meaningful connections, the investment feels unsustainable to many. Beyond immediate expenses, long term considerations around housing, shared finances, and potential legal outcomes in the event of separation add layers of caution. Family court systems in various jurisdictions have reputations for outcomes that can extend financial obligations for years, influencing decisions before any commitment begins. Men observing peers navigate divorce proceedings, asset divisions, or support arrangements frequently conclude that the risks outweigh the potential rewards, especially when independence offers clearer control over one's resources and future. Legal and social frameworks contribute to this mindset through their perceived imbalances. Divorce initiation rates show that women file in the majority of cases, often cited between 70 and 80%, depending on the study and demographics. While no fault divorce laws provide important protections, they also create environments where one party can end a marriage with significant consequences for the other in terms of property, custody, or ongoing payments. Men who witness these patterns through personal networks or public cases develop heightened awareness. They prioritize protecting their financial stability and emotional well being by avoiding arrangements that could lead to prolonged entanglement. This is not a rejection of commitment in principle, but a practical response to observed realities where fairness and reciprocity feel uncertain. Cultural messaging over recent decades has played its part in shaping attitudes. Discussions around masculinity often framed certain natural behaviors as problematic, leading to increased self consciousness in public and professional settings. Terms highlighting everyday actions as issues created an atmosphere where men felt under constant scrutiny. In workplaces, gyms, or social venues, stories of recordings or complaints over minor interactions circulated widely, prompting many to adopt greater reserve. The cumulative effect was a reduction in spontaneous engagement, with men choosing safer, more controlled environments for their interactions. This caution extended into dating, where the fear of misinterpretation or reputational risk added another deterrent. Education systems and media portrayals further influence generational perspectives. Boys and young men sometimes encountered narratives that emphasized historical shortcomings of traditional male roles without balanced acknowledgement of contributions. This could foster a sense of devaluation early on, affecting confidence in pursuing leadership or provider positions within relationships. As these individuals matured, many redirected energy toward personal skill development, financial independence, and hobbies that provided direct satisfaction. The result is a cohort of men who value autonomy and view traditional relationship paths as optional rather than essential. Technology has accelerated these shifts in unexpected ways. Dating applications, while promising convenience, often reinforced imbalances where one gender received disproportionate attention while the other faced higher rejection or effort requirements. Men reported spending significant time crafting profiles and initiating conversations only to encounter superficial judgments or ghosting. Platforms designed for safety sometimes enabled sharing of personal information in ways that could impact reputations based on incomplete accounts. Observing these mechanics, many men stepped back, trusting their own experiences over algorithmic promises. They began prioritizing real world evidence of compatibility and mutual effort over digital validation. In both Eastern and Western settings, the role of family expectations adds complexity. In China, parental involvement in matchmaking reflects deep cultural emphasis on lineage and stability. In the West, while less formalized, family discussions around milestones like marriage still carry influence, yet younger generations increasingly chart independent courses. Men in particular describe feeling less pressure to conform when they see viable paths to fulfillment outside conventional structures. They build routines centered on fitness, career progression, intellectual growth, and selective social circles that align with their values rather than external demands. Personal accounts bring these trends to life without relying on repetition. Lots of earlier examples. A software engineer in his late 20s, living in a mid sized American city, recounted how after several years of navigating dating apps and group social events, he noticed recurring patterns. Conversations frequently circled back to lifestyle expectations or financial demonstrations rather than shared interests or personal growth. After one relationship ended with disproportionate emotional labor on his side, he decided to pause and reassess. He invested in learning new programming skills, took up cycling for mental clarity, and focused on building an emergency fund that provided security. Over time, the peace he found in this structured independence made returning to active dating feel unnecessary. His story echoes the experiences of many who describe an initial adjustment period followed by genuine contentment. Another perspective comes from a tradesman in a European country who witnessed friends go through contentious separations. One peer lost significant assets and faced ongoing support payments after a marriage that lasted under 5 years. Seeing the stress and financial strain, he chose to maintain his bachelor lifestyle, living modestly, saving aggressively, and enjoying weekend fishing trips with like minded companions. He emphasized that his decision stemmed from practicality rather than bitterness, allowing him to control his schedule and resources without negotiation. These narratives illustrate how individual observations accumulate into broader behavioral changes. Economic uncertainty amplifies the appeal of self reliance. With inflation affecting housing and daily costs in many regions, men calculate that committing to shared responsibilities could expose them to volatility without guaranteed mutual support. Instead, they focus on minimalist approaches that reduce overhead and increase flexibility. This might mean smaller living spaces optimized for efficiency, skill based hobbies that double as potential income sources, or investments directed solely toward personal goals. The freedom gained from these choices fosters a sense of mastery that many report as deeply satisfying. Women navigating the same economic landscape encounter their own challenges. In urban China, professionally accomplished single women voice frustration at the limited pool of men willing to meet their standards. Some have begun adjusting expectations, stating in interviews that they no longer require certain material conditions like dowries or specific property arrangements. Yet the response from men remains measured as trust in long term compatibility takes time to rebuild. In Western societies, similar reflections appear in discussions where women describe difficulties balancing career demands with desires for partnership. The dating recession data shows lower active participation across genders, suggesting that systemic factors affect everyone, though manifestations differ. Birth rate declines connect directly to these relationship trends. In numerous developed nations, fertility has fallen below replacement levels, raising concerns about future workforce sustainability and social support systems. When fewer individuals form stable family units, the downstream effects ripple through economies and communities. Policymakers explore incentives such as adjusted marriage ages or family support programs. But cultural and personal preferences often prove more influential than top down measures. Men who have stepped back from family formation contribute to these statistics through deliberate choice, prioritizing personal stability amid uncertainty. The concept of mutual respect emerges as a recurring theme in honest reflections on what sustainable relationships require. When one side perceives consistent imbalances in effort, emotional labor, or risk, withdrawal becomes a logical protective mechanism. Men describe learning to value their time and energy after periods where it felt undervalued or exploited in unbalanced dynamics. They seek connections built on observable reciprocity rather than assumptions or societal scripts. This discernment leads to stronger boundaries and greater selectivity, qualities that enhance overall life satisfaction, even if it means fewer romantic partnerships. Social platforms continue to serve as mirrors for these evolving attitudes. Content discussing independence, financial strategies, and personal development resonates with audiences seeking practical guidance. Men share routines that emphasize discipline, such as consistent exercise regimens, meal planning for health, or side projects that build skills. Women contribute perspectives on their experiences with modern dating, sometimes acknowledging the need for adjusted approaches to foster better outcomes. The dialogue, while varied, underscores a shared recognition that old models require reevaluation in light of new realities. Legal awareness has become an important aspect of personal education for many men. Understanding asset protection, prenuptial considerations where applicable, and the mechanics of family law helps inform decisions before commitments form. This knowledge empowers proactive planning rather than reactive crisis management. It aligns with a broader mindset of self preservation that treats life choices as strategic rather than purely emotional. While not every man pursues formal legal study, basic familiarity through accessible resources reduces vulnerability and increases confidence in navigating potential scenarios. Mental and physical health improvements often accompany the shift toward greater autonomy. Reduced exposure to high conflict situations or constant performance expectations allows for better stress management. Men report higher engagement in activities like strength training, outdoor pursuits, or mindfulness practices that build resilience. Sleep quality improves when schedules remain self directed, and nutrition choices focus on personal optimization rather than accommodating shared preferences. These elements compound over time, creating a virtuous cycle where well being reinforces the decision to maintain independence. In China, the contrast between rural and urban dynamics adds nuance. Rural areas may still show surpluses of men due to migration patterns and historical factors. Yet urban centers flip the script with educated women outnumbering equivalently positioned men in the marriage market. This internal migration effect concentrates challenges in cities where lifestyle expectations rise alongside costs. Families from rural backgrounds sometimes encourage daughters to seek urban opportunities only to face the competitive realities of partner selection later. The resulting pressure manifests in the park gatherings and paid events where hope meets limited supply. Western parallels include regional variations where economic opportunities differ. In high cost coastal cities, dating markets reflect similar pressures around lifestyle maintenance and career focus. In more affordable inland areas, traditional patterns may persist longer, but overall trends toward delayed or foregone marriage appear widespread. Cross cultural comparisons reveal that while expressions vary, the underlying drivers of economic calculation, risk assessment, and value alignment show consistency. The rediscovery of personal purpose stands out in many accounts. Men describe periods of reflection where they reconnect with childhood interests or undeveloped talents. One individual took up woodworking, creating functional furniture for his own space as a form of meditation and practical skill building. Another studied financial markets independently, growing a modest portfolio through disciplined research rather than high risk speculation. These pursuits provide tangible progress and intrinsic reward that contrast with the uncertainty of relational investments. For society at large, these changes prompt questions about long term adaptation. How will communities support aging populations when family structures shift? What innovations might emerge from a workforce that values flexibility and self direction? Can cultural conversations move toward fostering mutual understanding without assigning blame? These are complex issues that benefit from calm examination rather than polarization. Individuals on all sides have agency to shape their contributions through personal choices and honest communication. Continuing this exploration, the role of media in shaping perceptions deserves attention. Portrayals of relationships in entertainment and news often emphasize conflict or idealized romance, rarely showing the everyday negotiations that sustain real partnerships. When narratives highlight imbalance or toxicity without counterexamples of successful collaboration, they can reinforce cynicism. Men consuming this content alongside personal experiences may conclude that caution is warranted. Balanced storytelling that acknowledges both challenges and positive possibilities could help bridge divides, though audience preferences often lean toward dramatic or confirmatory material. Education around healthy dynamics could play a preventive role if implemented thoughtfully. Programs focusing on communication skills, financial literacy in relationships, and realistic expectation setting might equip younger generations better. However, such initiatives must avoid ideological bias to maintain credibility. When content respects individual agency and observable outcomes, it gains traction. Men who have already adapted through self study often share practical advice in informal networks, emphasizing verification of compatibility over speed or pressure. The minimalist philosophy extends beyond possessions to commitments and mental load. By eliminating non essential obligations, men free cognitive resources for high value activities. This pruning process involves honest assessment of what truly adds to life versus what drains it. Relationships that require constant maintenance without proportional return fall into the latter category for many. The resulting clarity brings relief and renewed focus, allowing energy to flow toward goals that align with core values such as competence, freedom, and contribution on one's own terms. Women reflecting on these developments sometimes describe a phase of reevaluation. Career achievements that once took precedence may reveal limitations when paired with desires for companionship or family. Adjusting standards becomes a practical step, as seen in accounts where material requirements soften in favor of character and reliability. Yet, rebuilding trust after periods of disconnection requires consistent demonstration from both sides. Patience and mutual effort replace entitlement or demands if progress is the goal. Economic brinksmanship in various nations adds urgency to personal planning. When inflation erodes purchasing power and job markets fluctuate, self reliance becomes not just preferable, but necessary. Men who maintained lean lifestyles and diversified skills navigate these periods with greater resilience. They avoid the compounded stress of supporting additional dependents during downturns. This strategic positioning allows them to assist family or community selectively without compromising their foundation. Global connectivity through travel and remote work opens new avenues for some men. While not a universal solution, exposure to different cultural norms around relationships can highlight alternatives. Some explore international perspectives where traditional complementarity still holds appeal, though this requires careful navigation of legal and logistical realities. For most, the primary shift remains local, focusing on domestic independence rather than relocation. The narrative of adaptation carries forward as each generation learns from the last. Younger men entering adulthood observe the outcomes faced by older cohorts and adjust expectations accordingly. They prioritize education or trades that offer stability, develop social circles based on shared activities rather than romantic prospects, and approach interactions with measured optimism grounded in realism. This pragmatic orientation reduces disappointment and builds steady progress. Continuing onward from the detailed examination of these dynamics, let us turn attention to the specific mechanisms within matchmaking agencies that have emerged as a response to the growing imbalances. In many Chinese cities, professional services have divided into distinct categories to address the needs of different client groups. One type targets affluent men, charging them substantial fees ranging from thousands to tens of thousands of yuan per event while allowing women to attend at no cost. These gatherings often involve rigorous screening processes where female participants face detailed interviews designed to assess compatibility, sometimes described as intense evaluation sessions that filter for genuine interest rather than casual attendance. The focus remains on connecting high value male clients with suitable partners. Yet, even here, the emotional depth frequently appears limited as participants navigate the transactional elements inherent in such structured environments. Another category of agencies caters specifically to older single women, often charging annual fees around 39,800 yuan for a set number of introductions, promising access to higher quality male candidates. Initial consultations tend to build optimism by highlighting the participants' strengths and potential matches, creating an encouraging atmosphere. However, as introductions proceed without success, the tone can shift toward encouraging lowered standards or broader criteria to increase the chances of pairing. This pivot sometimes leads to dissatisfaction among clients who feel the promised results fall short, prompting questions about the sustainability of such models when expectations clash with market realities. Matchmakers themselves have shared insights into their operations, noting that while some earn significant commissions through rapid arrangements, the non refundable nature of fees can create disputes when outcomes do not align with client hopes. Flash marriages represent another layer in this ecosystem, functioning almost as a streamlined business process where agencies facilitate quick pairings for profit. Typical arrangement might involve a commission structure around 100,000 yuan per successful match, with intermediaries covering travel costs for women and conducting preliminary verifications of backgrounds. One experienced matchmaker described generating monthly earnings up to 300,000 yuan through efficient coordination. Yet even they caution about the prevalence of deceptive practices. In some cases, agencies retain fees regardless of long term success, turning the process into a high stakes transaction where trust becomes secondary to speed and volume. These rapid unions often prioritize surface level compatibility or financial incentives over deeper emotional foundations, contributing to higher rates of later dissatisfaction or dissolution. Real accounts from within these systems reveal the human complexities at play. Consider the case of a woman who maintained simultaneous engagements with two men, convincing each to purchase adjacent properties under the promise of marriage. She presented fabricated details about her own assets, including an apartment, vehicle, and savings, to build credibility. The arrangement unraveled when the two men discovered the overlap through chance encounters, leading to legal proceedings and mutual accusations. Such stories illustrate how financial motivations can distort intentions, transforming what should be personal connections into calculated maneuvers that ultimately erode confidence across the board. Another testimony involves a woman who entered marriage expecting luxury and stability, only to discover afterward that her partner had used her as a front for accumulating substantial debts exceeding 12 million yuan. Assets were seized in the aftermath, leaving her to navigate the financial fallout while questioning the foundations of the union. These examples, drawn from broader reflections on the marriage market, underscore a recurring theme where materialism and social pressures overshadow genuine compatibility. When love becomes framed primarily through economic lenses, both parties risk entering arrangements that prioritize short term gains over sustainable harmony. The broader economic context in China amplifies these challenges. High bride price expectations, sometimes reaching hundreds of thousands of yuan, alongside requirements for property ownership, place considerable burdens on average men who lack the resources to meet such thresholds. Rural families, in particular, face difficulties when urban standards filter downward, leading many potential grooms to withdraw entirely rather than incur debt or compromise their financial security. In urban centers, professionally successful women who have achieved high levels of education and income often maintain elevated criteria for partners, seeking equivalence or superiority in status and assets. This creates a structural mismatch where the available pool of men perceived as suitable shrinks significantly, even in environments with overall male population advantages from historical demographics. Data from various regions highlights the paradox. While national figures indicate millions more men than women overall, urban marriage markets frequently show the reverse dynamic for educated cohorts. In first tier cities, single women holding bachelor's degrees or higher can constitute up to 72% of the unmarried female population in certain age groups, with over 60% earning monthly incomes above a certain threshold. Yet the proportion of men who align with their socioeconomic expectations hovers closer to 38%, fostering environments described informally as shifting toward female majority dynamics in partner selection. Events in Shenzhen have reportedly seen ratios approaching 9 women for every 1 man at certain gatherings, with high earning men attracting overwhelming interest from dozens or even hundreds of attendees. Similar imbalances appear in other locations. In Hangzhou, some matchmaking sessions recorded figures reaching 1 man for every 50 women. Shanghai's well known People's Park features resume postings where 70 to 80% pertain to female candidates, reflecting parental efforts to highlight daughters amid limited male engagement. Beijing gatherings on occasions like Valentine's Day have drawn 600 women against only 25 men, resulting in stark disparities. In Gongjuling, over 8,000 women registered for a government supported event, yet participation from men remained around 40. These scenes paint a picture of earnest attempts by families and organizers to bridge gaps, met with consistent reluctance from the male side, driven by practical assessments of costs, risks, and alternatives. Extending this view to Western societies reveals complementary trends, though shaped by different cultural and institutional factors. Surveys indicate that 63% of men under 30 in the United States describe themselves as single, compared to significantly lower figures for women in the same bracket. This disparity aligns with declining marriage rates that have reached historic lows, with only about 46% of adults currently married in recent assessments, down substantially from mid 20th century levels. Young adults report limited dating activity, with many months passing without romantic outings for large portions of both genders, though men show particularly pronounced withdrawal from initiation. The financial aspects mirror some Eastern pressures, but manifest through different channels. Average date costs in many American cities now surpass $90, often falling primarily on the initiating party, which in practice tends to be men. When accumulated across repeated interactions that yield little long term connection, the expenditure feels disproportionate to many. Beyond immediate spending, considerations around shared living, potential separations, and associated legal processes introduce further hesitation. Systems governing asset division and ongoing obligations in dissolution cases are perceived by some as carrying uneven exposures, prompting preemptive calculations that favor maintaining individual control over resources. Cultural and educational influences have contributed to these patterns over time. Discussions in media and institutions sometimes emphasize critiques of traditional male roles without equivalent focus on collaborative strengths, leading to environments where young men felt their natural inclinations were under examination. This fostered greater caution in social and professional interactions, with many adopting reserved approaches to minimize potential misunderstandings. In educational settings, differing engagement levels between boys and girls in certain subjects have occasionally led to questions about systemic fit, influencing long term confidence in assuming provider or leadership positions within family contexts. Dating technologies intended to simplify connections have instead highlighted imbalances for some users. Applications often result in uneven distribution of attention, where initiation efforts from men encounter higher volumes of rejection or fleeting responses. Safety oriented features, while valuable, can enable one sided sharing of experiences that impact reputations based on partial narratives. Men attuned to these mechanics increasingly rely on direct observation and personal boundaries rather than platform assurances, leading to selective or reduced participation. The result is a dating environment where effort feels misaligned with outcomes for a notable segment of men. Personal development emerges as a central theme in accounts from those who have stepped back. Individuals describe redirecting energy previously spent on courtship toward skill acquisition, physical conditioning, and financial planning. One professional shared how consistent investment in technical expertise and side ventures created a sense of progress and security that relational pursuits had not matched. Another, engaged in manual trades, highlighted the satisfaction derived from tangible results and flexible schedules unencumbered by shared decision making complexities. These paths emphasize intrinsic rewards, where personal mastery replaces external validation as the primary measure of fulfillment. Health and wellness practices frequently accompany this reorientation. Structured exercise routines build not only physical capability, but also mental resilience, providing outlets for focus amid broader societal uncertainties. Nutritional habits, optimized for individual needs, support sustained energy levels without the adjustments required in partnered living. Sleep patterns improve when dictated by personal rhythms rather than compromise, contributing to clearer thinking and emotional stability. Over months and years, these habits compound, reinforcing the value of autonomy as a foundation for long term well being. Demographic implications extend beyond individual choices to collective outcomes. Declining marriage and birth rates in multiple nations raise considerations for future workforce composition, innovation capacity, and support structures for aging populations. In China, marriage registrations fell to around 6.1 million in recent years, contributing to fertility rates below replacement levels and prompting policy discussions around incentives or adjusted age requirements. Western contexts show parallel drops, with projections indicating sustained low family formation unless underlying drivers shift. These trends invite examination of how societies might adapt through innovation in living arrangements, economic models, or community frameworks that accommodate greater individual independence. Policy responses vary, with some regions exploring support for family formation through financial aids or cultural campaigns. Yet many observers note that personal preferences and lived experiences often outweigh top down measures when core perceptions of fairness or value remain unaddressed. Encouraging open dialogue around mutual contributions, realistic expectations, and verifiable compatibility could foster environments where relationships form voluntarily rather than through pressure or transaction. When both parties see clear benefits and protections, participation increases naturally. The role of social media in amplifying or reflecting these shifts merits consideration. Platforms host a wide range of content, from personal vlogs showcasing independent lifestyles to discussions analyzing demographic data. Women embracing single life through refined routines, fitness, and consumption choices sometimes reframe earlier stigmas around delayed marriage, presenting autonomy as empowering. Men share strategies for financial independence, minimalist living, and skill building, creating informal networks that normalize self directed paths. While echo chambers exist on all sides, the aggregate visibility of diverse experiences encourages broader awareness that no single narrative captures the full picture. Cross cultural comparisons reveal shared human elements beneath surface differences. In both Eastern and Western settings, economic pressures, evolving gender expectations, and risk assessments influence decisions around commitment. Urban professionals in China grapple with status equivalence, while their counterparts abroad navigate legal and financial uncertainties. Rural or lower income cohorts face distinct barriers related to resource access or migration patterns. Across these contexts, the common thread is individuals weighing observable realities against idealized models, adjusting behaviors accordingly to protect their interests and pursue sustainable contentment. Stories of adaptation continue to surface. A man in a technical field described how, after years of navigating mixed signals in social settings, he invested in advanced certifications that expanded his career options and personal confidence. Weekends now involve strategic planning for investments or outdoor activities that recharge his energy without relational overhead. He notes improved clarity in decision making and reduced anxiety about external judgments. Such accounts emphasize that stepping back does not equate to isolation, but rather to intentional selection of engagements that align with core values. Women in parallel positions often articulate their own journeys of reflection. Some who achieved professional milestones later reconsider the balance between career and personal life, exploring ways to integrate both without compromising standards. Others focus on building supportive networks among peers or developing skills that enhance self sufficiency. These processes, while challenging, can lead to greater self understanding and adjusted approaches that prioritize substance over superficial criteria. The concept of observable reality as a guiding principle gains prominence in many reflections. When patterns of imbalance or unmet reciprocity repeat across experiences, individuals learn to trust evidence over assurances. This discernment applies to financial dealings, emotional investments, and long term planning alike. By focusing on controllable factors such as personal growth, boundary maintenance, and resource stewardship, many report achieving levels of peace and purpose previously elusive amid constant negotiation. Societal evolution, in response to these shifts, may involve renewed emphasis on education around practical life skills. Financial literacy, conflict resolution, and expectation management could equip younger generations to form connections on firmer ground. Initiatives that highlight successful collaborative models without ideological overlay might rebuild trust where it has eroded. Ultimately, sustainable relationships thrive when rooted in mutual respect, shared effort, and realistic assessments rather than external mandates or transactional exchanges. As economic landscapes continue to present uncertainties, including fluctuating costs and employment dynamics, the appeal of streamlined, self managed lives grows for those prioritizing stability. Minimalist principles extend to time allocation, where energy directs toward high yield activities rather than diffuse obligations. This approach does not preclude future partnerships, but ensures any such step occurs from a position of strength and clarity rather than necessity or pressure. The narrative of personal rediscovery unfolds gradually for many. Interests long set aside resurface, whether through creative pursuits, intellectual exploration, or community involvement on voluntary terms. One individual took up landscape photography, traveling locally to capture scenes that reflected his growing appreciation for solitude and natural order. Another pursued language studies for personal enrichment, opening mental pathways unconnected to relational goals. These endeavors foster a sense of expansion that contrasts with earlier periods of contraction under mismatched expectations. In reflecting on institutional influences, family courts and related frameworks receive attention for their role in shaping perceptions. While designed to protect vulnerable parties, certain outcomes in asset and custody matters have led some men to view participation in formal unions as carrying asymmetric exposures. Awareness of these structures, gained through observation or shared accounts, informs cautious decision making. This does not diminish the value of committed relationships, but underscores the importance of entering them with full transparency and aligned protections where possible. Educational environments also factor into long term attitudes. When curricula or campus cultures emphasize certain critiques without balanced perspectives on contributions, young men may internalize mixed messages about their societal place. Over time, this can translate into preferences for self reliant paths that bypass perceived scrutiny. Balanced approaches that recognize diverse strengths across genders could mitigate such effects, encouraging engagement rather than withdrawal. Workplace norms around interactions have similarly evolved, with heightened sensitivities prompting professional distance in some cases. While necessary for appropriate conduct, excessive caution can limit mentorship or collaboration opportunities. Men navigating these spaces often focus intently on deliverables, deriving satisfaction from competence demonstrated through results rather than interpersonal dynamics. The global dimension connects these local stories into a larger tapestry. Demographic imbalances in one region echo relational hesitations in another, all influenced by modernization, economic transitions, and cultural reevaluations. Technology facilitates awareness across borders, allowing individuals to learn from distant experiences and adapt strategies accordingly. Yet, core human needs for connection, purpose, and security remain consistent, suggesting that solutions lie in addressing root misalignments rather than surface symptoms. As this exploration deepens, the emphasis remains on individual agency within broader trends. Men who have chosen paths of greater independence demonstrate resilience through proactive adaptation. Women encountering adjusted landscapes have opportunities to innovate in their approaches to partnership and self fulfillment. Societies benefit when these shifts prompt constructive conversations that honor lived realities while envisioning equitable futures. Further layers reveal how financial independence strategies empower decision making. Men prioritizing savings, diversified income streams, and low debt lifestyles gain flexibility that buffers against volatility. Learning about investment principles or entrepreneurial basics provides tools for self directed growth, reducing reliance on systems perceived as unpredictable. This knowledge base supports not only personal security, but also the capacity to contribute selectively to family or community without overextension. Mental frameworks play a crucial role in sustaining these choices. Cultivating gratitude for autonomy, practicing disciplined routines, and maintaining perspective on historical contexts help navigate periods of doubt. Many describe an initial adjustment followed by increasing appreciation for the freedom to define success on personal terms. This internal alignment often radiates outward, influencing interactions with greater calm and authenticity. For those observing from the sidelines, the patterns invite thoughtful consideration of contributing factors. Decades of social messaging that question certain traditional roles without equivalent emphasis on mutual value may have accelerated disengagement. When contributions feel undervalued or risks appear disproportionately assigned, rational responses include boundary reinforcement and resource conservation. Honest acknowledgement of these dynamics across perspectives could open pathways to recalibration. In professional spheres, men focusing on excellence within their fields often find validation through achievement rather than relational status. Career progression tied to skill and reliability offers measurable progress that contrasts with the ambiguities of modern courtship. This focus can lead to innovations or efficiencies that benefit wider economies, turning personal adaptation into broader societal contributions. Community aspects emerge in informal networks where like minded individuals share practical advice on everything from efficient living setups to stress management techniques. These connections provide support without the complexities of romantic entanglements, fostering camaraderie based on shared goals of self improvement. Participation remains voluntary, preserving the autonomy that many value highly. Looking toward future possibilities, technological advancements in areas like remote work or virtual collaboration may further enable customized lifestyles. Individuals could design routines that integrate work, leisure, and personal development with minimal external dependencies. While not replacing human connection entirely, such tools expand options for those seeking balance on their terms. The rhetorical arc of adaptation highlights resilience in the face of change. Rather than viewing withdrawal as loss, many frame it as strategic repositioning towards sustainable well being. This perspective encourages continuous learning and flexibility, qualities essential in dynamic environments. As conditions evolve, those who have honed self reliance position themselves to respond effectively, whether through renewed engagement or continued independence. Women parallel this process in their own ways, sometimes developing entrepreneurial ventures or deepening expertise in chosen fields. Reflections on past approaches can lead to innovations in communication or expectation setting that enhance relational quality where pursued. The collective movement toward greater self awareness across genders holds potential for more intentional interactions in the long term. Economic analyses suggest that sustained low family formation carries implications for consumption patterns, labor markets, and public finances. Fewer households may shift demand toward individual oriented goods and services, while aging demographics strain support systems. Proactive adaptations, including policy innovations or cultural dialogues, could mitigate pressures while respecting personal freedoms. In personal finance, emphasis on emergency reserves and skill diversification provides buffers against uncertainty. Men who have streamlined expenses report greater peace of mind, knowing their foundations remain solid regardless of external fluctuations. This discipline often extends to health investments, where preventive measures yield compounding benefits over decades. Creative outlets offer additional avenues for expression and fulfillment. Whether through writing, music, or hands on projects, these activities allow exploration of identity beyond relational definitions. Many discover talents previously overshadowed by busier social calendars, leading to enriched inner lives and occasional sharing within selective circles. The pacing of societal change allows time for reflection at individual and collective levels. Each story of adjusted priorities adds nuance to the larger narrative, reminding us that behind statistics lie human beings seeking meaning and stability. Approaching these developments with clarity and directness while maintaining professional focus on observable patterns supports constructive understanding. As we layer additional insights, the importance of pattern recognition stands out as a key tool for informed choices. Men who have studied recurring dynamics in interactions or systems develop sharper discernment, applying it to career moves, financial decisions, and personal boundaries alike. This skill reduces vulnerability to mismatched expectations and enhances overall life navigation. For broader audiences, these trends prompt questions about fostering environments where contributions from all parties receive balanced recognition. Education that emphasizes practical relationship skills alongside academic or vocational training could prepare individuals more effectively. Media representations that include diverse, successful models might counterbalance narratives focused primarily on conflict. As we bring this discussion to a close, take a moment to reflect on everything we have explored together today. We have walked through the real stories unfolding in parks across China, where parents hold up signs for daughters who find themselves waiting in growing numbers while men choose different paths. We have examined the quiet but powerful shift happening not just in one country, but across Western societies where men have stepped back from old expectations after years of observing unbalanced risks, shifting cultural messages, and economic realities that no longer add up the same way. These are not sudden decisions born from anger, but measured choices rooted in pattern recognition, self preservation, and the discovery that peace and purpose can be built without following scripts that no longer serve. Men have learned to value their time, energy, and resources in ways that prioritize personal stability and genuine fulfillment. And that choice is reshaping lives and societies in profound ways. The desperation now visible in public spaces and online conversations shows how quickly tables can turn when long term behaviors meet hard realities. Yet the men who walked away are not looking back because they have found something real in their solitude and self directed lives. What did you think about what was discussed today? Do you agree with the perspectives presented here? Leave a comment on the video sharing your thoughts, whether you see these patterns playing out in your own life, in your community, or in the wider world. Your honest reflections add important layers to this conversation and help others who are navigating the same changing landscape. Like the video if you like it. Do not forget to subscribe so you never miss the next straight talking breakdown from Angry Guy. If you like the video, share the video with others who need to hear this message. And just remember that all roads lead to MWA, men walking away, and cheers.
Nothing says you care like crypto. Nothing can compare. Nothing says you care like crypto. Oh, nothing can compare to crypto.